Before we dive into today's episode, I want to let you know that I am redoing my Understanding Your Child and Teens Behavior mini course. I am so freaking excited. Understanding your child's behavior is a passion of mine. It's something that I discovered early on in my mothering and something that I began to be noticed for in my social work career. Is truly seeing and understanding children's behavior on a deeper emotional level without reacting to it. There are so many parenting books out there, and where I find myself is in this sweet spot of being in it with my 3 boys who are now 17, 13, and 10. So if you're interested in joining us for Understanding Your Child's Behavior, head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/parenting. This is not just about you managing your own big emotions or seeing and understanding your child's behavior. This is about the action and practicality. Parenting is a lifelong relationship. There are no quick fixes. There are no 6-step strategies to whatever, all your problems going away. This is really about understanding emotional behavior on a deeper level. Because I truly believe when you become empowered and understand what is truly going on in your child's brain and also their emotional well-being, you can show up with more confidence to know exactly what to do, how to manage your own expectations and also manage the expectations that we inevitably project onto our children. So if you're a parent who buys all the parenting books, you read it all, but you're interested in what those tips or strategies that you can actually implement in your life, I have broken this down into a 5-part mini series and some additional bonus content where not only you can learn to manage your big emotions and be present for your children, but you will also understand what is going on in your child's world. We don't need to do the work for our children. We need to understand that they are their own human, having their own human experience. And we are having our own human experience. And parenting is the co-creation and a relationship. Whether it's anxiety, ADD, ADHD, beyond all of this, your child is a soul having a human experience, and they are worthy of being seen, heard, and understood. And so are you. So if you're interested, head on over to Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/parenting and check out the Understanding Your Child and Teens Behavior mini course. I was feeling it all. I didn't know what I needed. I didn't know that I needed that. Now I understand there is a time and a place for meditation, but that's not what I needed at the time. I was struggling to find purpose, and my children were struggling with COVID. Hello, everyone. I am back, and today I'm really excited for you to hear a conversation I had with Tarah. Tarah is a student of my work. She came through the mastery program in the middle of COVID when she found herself struggling with her teens behavior. That was really one of the ins for her. But there was also the career stuff that was going on. And I'm sure you're going to see yourself or identify with part of Tarah's story, because I hear this so often from the professional women that I work with. There's this dissatisfaction in their work and there's disconnect at home. But here's the interesting part. Tarah was actually seeking support. She did the things that she thought she needed to do in order to find fulfillment. She went to HR, she went to management, and what came back to her was not feeling psychologically safe to be radically honest with what was going on. And she still followed through. She followed the breadcrumbs. And yet she felt like, not this, not this, not this. Guilt and resentment were part of her daily life. And she really didn't know what she needed. So here's my thoughts before we jump into the conversation with Tarah. This is so freaking common. And this is why I tell people, you are actually not an expert in what you need. If you are hiring a therapist, if you are hiring a healthcare provider, they should be aware of what a human actually needs in order to create the desired outcome. But there was something that Tarah said that she didn't need to be the expert in her journey. She didn't know what she didn't know. That's okay, right? Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. But during this process, she learned to discover who she was and what she needed. But here's the double-edged sword, the chicken or the egg. We live in a culture that has taught us not to consider our needs, not to trust ourselves, not to put ourselves on our own frickin' to-do list. And yet, when we start seeking help for ourselves or our loved ones, a lot of the feedback that we get is, what do you think you should do? And I say this to people all the time. This is why I think it's very, very important for us to understand that having a sense of self-awareness is so incredibly important in the self-development journey. Because if you are not self-aware of what you need, you don't know where to find it. Tarah talks about her journey as she started to shift her mindset, to shift her energy, to shift her priorities. She started to network differently. And as she started to network differently, she started to attract different things, including her dream job. And at the end of this conversation, she talks about the additional work that she's starting to lean into. Tarah is a beautiful example of what is possible when we give ourselves permission to feel good. All right, let's dive in. I want you to hear from Tarah herself. And I also want you to identify any pieces of you that you can see inside of Tarah. Because the intention for this podcast is just to give you hope. Hope that change is possible. So let's dive in.
For quite a long time, probably almost a decade, I felt like I was just struggling. I was struggling to find my purpose. I felt like I was constantly just scrambling up loose gravel or mud. I was exhausted, frustrated, just resentful in general. I started getting major stomach issues. My health was going down, and I was just awful to be around. At the time, I knew I wasn't happy in my day job. I felt underappreciated. I felt like I was always the issue and unable to accomplish what I thought I should be able to do. So I constantly kept working harder. I kept working longer hours. I felt like I was always busy, but just not getting anywhere at all. There were some really toxic people in management that were also constantly undermining me and overall just made me feel less than. I felt so small and useless, despite the fact that I had years of training and experience and I was qualified to be there. One person in particular would ask my opinion and then either tell me I was wrong or consult another male colleague and then present it to the group like it was his own idea. I got told that when I smiled, I sounded too flirty. I was hard to take seriously. So I tried to be more serious. And then I was told I sound bitchy. I tried to change my tone a bit. And then I was given the feedback that I sounded like a doting mother trying to get her kid to ride a bike. I couldn't do anything right. But I was making more money than I would anywhere else. And I felt like I had no other opportunities. And so I stayed. I needed to pay the bills. So I started looking for other ways to change the situation. I talked to the employee assistance program, a counselor, and a few times I was advised to, take deep breaths, start meditation, just take some time off, take some stress leave, take antidepressants. And then a couple different counselors because I wasn't happy with the first. So I saw a different one and they told me I needed to talk to my manager about how I felt. I was like, yeah, right. I'm going to admit that I feel like this. So all I knew was that I didn't want to admit defeat. I didn't want to let them win. And I wanted this job. So I couldn't let them know that I was failing at it. And so I constantly just felt like this imposter. I couldn't let my family down. It just felt like I was in between a rock and a hard place. And then enter the pandemic in 2020. My kids were 12 and 14 at the time. One turned inward and was scared and anxious about everything, didn't want to talk to us, locked herself in her room. She was scared to make other people sick. She was scared to get sick. And then the other one went the exact opposite. She went rebel. She was determined not to let this pandemic keep her from her social life. And she started getting into a bit of trouble and risky behavior. And my husband and I were both fortunate enough to keep our jobs and we were working from home. So although we were both at home, I felt like I was taking on the burden of the family, trying to take care of everybody and get work done while he was home, locked in the room saying he was working. So I just felt like I all of a sudden had way more on my plate that I could handle. Any hours that were my own were either at work or with the kids trying to figure things out. And it just got worse. And I was just toggling between guilt and resentment constantly struggling. And yeah, still, I was horrible to be around. Well, during the pandemic, we caved and got a puppy. And so my reprieve had been walking the dog. I would take the dog by myself, go for long walks. We couldn't be out with anybody. So it was really easy to just have this space to myself. And that's when I started listening to podcasts. I was actually looking for parenting help. And that's actually when I found your podcast, Heather. And after a while, I started, listening to other people's podcasts, and it just opened up this world of, self-help, self-care, and all of these words and terms I had never heard before. So then I ended up signing up for the mastery program and connected with some ladies in the group and started focusing on things that I actually needed to do, the uncomfortable work. So my accountability partner in the program actually became a really great friend. And we still, 2 years later, meet every week. We still meet. I don't think I would be who I am here today without her. And we've just gotten each other through so much. It's been amazing. And ever since I started the work and just following these breadcrumbs, it's opened up so many opportunities and so much in my life that you don't even realize all these little things are making such a big difference until you look back at where you came from. I didn't realize how emotionally numb I was. I didn't realize I had built up such a rigid armor around myself that even though it was keeping out some of the negative things, it was also keeping out a lot of the positive. And I had no clue who I even was anymore. I didn't know what hobbies I had or what I even did to make myself happy. Now the suggestions about meditation, breath work, antidepressants, stress leave, they're all good tools. And I think part of the healing, and I use a lot of them now. I do think they can help. But at the beginning, I wasn't even at a point where I could see those options for me because I couldn't even pinpoint or describe what was going on or what I needed. So I would complain about issues to the counselor, to my husband, to a couple close friends, and nothing was changing. I was just living in that constant loop of guilt and resentment. And I had to be honest with myself and figure out what I was truly feeling and what I really wanted. And at that point, I couldn't even tell you what those were, but that started to change with these little habits and with the work that I was doing on myself. And so the magic of this is that when you work on yourself, you actually show up differently in the world. And being true to myself really made me think about what I wanted out of this job. Why did I want it? What was I looking for? What was I missing in my life? And I was able to start asking for what I want. One example would be I asked my husband to help with the meals. He was like, yeah, of course. I didn't know you needed that. And so asking for what I want also made me realize that the resources that I had at work were not setting me up for success. I didn't have any teamwork or coworkers that were working with me to help get these projects done. And so I wasn't actually getting the resources that I needed. And so being able to ask for those things just started to relieve so much of that stress. And with my kids, I was able to, release that claw on them to try and keep them safe, which is what I thought I was doing. But what I was doing was just creating more stress for them. And now I feel like having, setting boundaries myself and being able to create those, a bit of space between us is actually more loving than holding on tight. And we're all much happier for it. And I think that me working on myself was giving me the ability to do that, because I never saw that before as love. I saw that as giving up. So now, things with my husband, my kids are so much better than they've ever been. And funny enough, when I started making these changes for myself and started showing up differently, I started networking differently with people around me. I started building a community at work of people that I needed in my life. And out of the blue, last year, the director of the public health lab called me up and offered me my dream job. I didn't even apply for it. And I was already kind of working on an exit strategy in another direction. And so all of a sudden, I thought from what I thought was zero options, I had two great options to look at for where I wanted to take my career. And I'm now in my dream job. I'm making more money than I thought I would ever be. I have an excellent team that I get to work with. And I just feel like my life is full of purpose. Even though I'm still really busy, it feels very, very different. So, I think over these past few years, I've realized that that I had a lot of this knowledge already. I just didn't know how to put it all together.
All right, Tarah, I love your story. And I know that you kind of took us through a timeline of how you felt before mastery, after mastery, and through mastery. But what I wrote down was there was a few things that I wrote down. One of them, asking for what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote down asking for what I want, boundaries, being healthy and creating that space between you and your children actually created more connection with you and your children and your family. And you mentioned something about, I never saw that as love. I saw that as giving up. That was like a mind blown for me, because I think there's a lot, it's one thing to understand your emotions, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are like, oh, I feel so guilty. I could never do that. And we're not taught emotional intelligence skills and how guilt and resentment are constantly running in the background. And then we just go, 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 go. And you're like, nope, I could never stop doing that. But how your beliefs slowly change. And when your beliefs slowly change, what your values change. And when your values change, you're attracting the things that you want and desire in your life as people seeing your leadership skills and then offering you a job. So can you talk a little bit more about that? Like if someone's like, you're different, like what is actually different about you now? It's it's not your daily habits. Like what is actually, that was what you had to do in order to change. Like what is different about you now? What will you like? Yeah. Can you put that into words at all?
Sure. So I think the thing that's changed about me was that I was coming across as somebody who was a victim, and I was coming across as somebody who was like, why aren't you helping me? And what's changed is that I've realized it's nobody else's responsibility to help me. Mm-hmm. And they don't know what I need or want. I need to tell them what I need or want. And so now I feel like I'm worthy of being here. I feel like I belong here. I feel like I've earned it. And so I feel like I can confidently approach somebody and say, hey, there's a bit of a gap here, or hey, I kind of need more resources here. How do you feel about that? Is this okay? What can I do to help? And I just feel like I've taken more ownership of myself and what I need. And so coming across as someone who's saying, why don't you help me? Is very different than saying, hey, I've noticed I'm lacking a little bit of this. Is it possible to get some help here? Or can you guide me to the person that can? And the response you get from people is so much different, or so different than
it's so different
the first way. Yeah.
When we learn to communicate what we need. And I've noticed over the years working with people, but also myself, I say, over communicating is my love language. Like, because oftentimes people don't know, like I'm not a mind reader. Right. And it's just something as simple. Someone's like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you need to do either. But if you ask and show up as the coach and the curious person in your life, that's a different energy and a different stance than when we just, like you said, I don't know. And so really learning to show up and ask yourself, how do I want to feel? What do I want? Where do I need to go? But you have to be able to let go of the fear of unknown and uncertainty and trust the process along the way.
Absolutely. And you brought up a good term there, over communicating, because I feel like that changes too. Coming from a place where you feel worthy, you feel confident, and you communicate a lot is very helpful. But I feel like before I felt like this, I was over communicating my excuses. I was over communicating why I wasn't achieving what I should and trying to constantly justify my existence.
Interesting. That I think a lot of people can identify with that, of how they are just trying to justify their existence in all areas of their life, not just at work.
Yeah, I was constantly trying to over-explain why I felt angry, why I felt guilty, why I was mad, why I wasn't fun anymore, whatever. Yeah. It was all areas of life for sure.
So I would say you're in the stage now of what typically happens when people find alignment in their personal life or within themselves. The outside starts to change. And so since then, you have decided to start your own business and really take a stand. So can you just talk a little bit about the work that you are leaning into?
Yes, absolutely. So the work I'm leaning into is there's a lot of initiatives starting or have been going on now around diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. I'm at a university and also corporate. There's a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives going on. So this is a major correction in a system that has historically not recognized these areas. And so it's really important. And a lot of these initiatives are kind of top down, which definitely needs to happen, and they're great. So the work I've been leaning into is not these are great, but more of these are great and. So the and part is, we can hire people with diverse backgrounds, but we need to empower them to feel like this. They need to feel like they belong, like they've earned it, like they're not just there because they checked off the box for, a woman or a person of color or a person with a disability or anything like that. They made it into this job because they're qualified to do this job, and they're getting an opportunity to be there. And so it's this major cultural shift that's happening now. And so I think these top-down initiatives are fantastic. And we also need the work to help people feel like they belong there, because this is how we create sustainable diversity, is by teaching people how to show up as their best self and feel empowered to help others do the same. And that's going to just create this better culture.
And I think that takes a lot of inner leadership skills. Like, a lot of what I'm hearing you say is the personal transformation that you have gone through has greatly impacted how you show up in the workplace. And we don't just need to tell people to go meditate or just to calm down. We need to, one, have to have psychological safety to feel open that you can go up to your manager and say, I don't have the right supports, but also you feeling more in control as a person from the inside out. And that takes a lot of healing. That takes a lot of dedication. Do you think we are headed in that direction on a bigger scale? If we have taken such, as a culture, big leaps to be like, check these boxes, right? Like, we need to do inclusion now. Do you think we'll get to that next layer where you got to pull back the layers and be like, this is about people. This is not about box checking.
Oh, I think so, for sure. And I think it has to, because we live in a diverse country. I mean, we're here in Canada, but now with immigration, with all these different reasons around the world that people are emigrating to new countries, this isn't unique to Canada. This isn't unique to the United States. And I think that, we never really know what someone's story is. And so a lot of our prejudices, our biases come from our own experiences or stories or what we've been taught growing up. And it doesn't necessarily hold for everybody. We can't keep these huge stereotypes, but trying to look at diversity in a way that, you take these granular categories of people, realizing that they're already going to have a different experience, a different lived experience that they're coming into the job with, so that you're getting these diverse views on things, and having representation from different viewpoints is so important. There's lots of studies now that show that, companies are more profitable when they take into account different viewpoints when they're making decisions and stuff like that. So I think this is definitely the way to go. And I think the more people that can show up as someone who's curious rather than judgmental will really help make this possible.
Do you see a correlation with the inner journey that you had to go through from curious or judgmental to curious, and what you're trying to teach in the workplace?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of it was my judgments about myself and my situation. And I used to feel like I had to change my surroundings. I had to change these situations and manage that stuff. But really what I had to change was me. I love it.
What would you say to that version of yourself like 2 years ago? 3 years, let's say 3 years ago, before you even started listening to podcasts and got a puppy? What would you say to that?
I would say you have put yourself first. Mm-hmm. I would say put your own mask on first before assisting others.
That's it? That's all you would say?
I would say make the investment, do the inner work.
And it's going to be okay.
One
step at a time.
Yeah, I was really, I've now done energy healing. I have crystals. I am an inner hippie and a scientist, but the magic about this energy work is it's undeniable. And I think that I'm a living example of someone who just opened their mind just a little bit and let it in. And it's created huge changes for me.
I love it. So Tarah, where can people find you, what you're up to, all the things?
So I have put together a 90-day program. I'm just getting my website up and running, diversitysci.com. And so I'm putting together a quiz to help you figure out if you're dealing with burnout, workplace burnout, or if you have issues with workplace culture, or if you are completely, like I was, just ignoring what you truly need for self-care. And so I put together a quiz. I have a program. I have a workshop coming up. And so if you go to my website, I will include all of those details.
Perfect. Can you spell out your website just in case they didn't hear it correctly?
Sure. It's Diversity, DIVERSITY, for sci.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Tarah. You get secretly creeped out, mildly terrified of the possibility. Imagine this, jumping into and hanging out in 3-degree Fahrenheit water. Why not? Well, I started doing this for shits and giggles. Yes, I started a deliberate practice of cold plunging on a daily basis, or cold therapy, or whatever the heck you want to call it. I have partnered with Culture, COLDTURE, and they delivered a cold plunge tub to my house. So I started doing this on a daily basis. And I said, if you want me to advertise your cold plunge tub, I have to actually use it myself because I need to practice what I preach. And I'm going to give honest feedback. So you can definitely check out episode 998, where my husband and I talk about our cold plunging experience. But if you've been on the fence of purchasing your own cold plunge tub and you're ready to dive in, why not do that during the holiday season? So if you head on over to Culture, COLDTURE, and purchase a tub or one of their little filtration systems, you can use the promo code Heather, HEATHER, and get $600 off. You heard me right, $600 off. That goes until December 1st, 2022. And I believe if you use the promo code after December 1st, you can get $250 off. Cold plunging has been an absolute mental game changer. I am not kidding when I say that. It is so incredibly emotionally uncomfortable. I hate it every single time. And I am so fucking proud of myself every time I get out and I feel good all day. Culture, COLDTURE.com. Use the promo code Heather, $600 off. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Before December 1st.